If there's a single lesson I've learned in 15 years as a religion journalist and frankly in 40 years as a human being, it's that God is huge, enormous, unboxable, untamable. God is ever present, the author and creator of all things, that divine spark and the holy companion for all of us. God is bigger than anything we can fathom. God is nearer to us than the freckles on our faces or the whorls at the end of our fingerprints. God dwells in all of creation and in every single person. This go-between God helps us make connections with other souls that we'd never make on our own. God is the thread that ties us together, the breath in our lungs, our hope, our friend, our parent, and our guide, even when we're blind to God's presence. Some of us like to think that the world falls into two distinct, mutually exclusive categories: the sacred or the profane, or the spiritual and the secular. As I understand it, when it comes to God and the movement of God's Spirit, labels simply don't fit. Everything is spiritual. Everything has the potential to be sanctified and therefore to be sacred. And in my experience, more often than not, God shows up most spectacularly in the places some folks believe God isn't supposed to be found. It's a profound lesson I learned for the first time 28 years ago when I experienced my first epiphany. I remember it vividly, a 12-year-old me standing there with my buddy Rob, fiddling with the stereo as he put on an album someone had given him. "I think you'll like it. They're an Irish rock band, but they're Christians," he told me as the first track began to play. The drums faded in, a bass guitar began to thump, an electric guitar began to keen, and then this voice, a man's rogue tenor, the likes of which I'd never heard before, began howling. I try to sing this song. I try to stand up, but I can't find my feet. I try to speak up, but only in you I am complete. Gloria in te Domine, Gloria in exultate. Oh God, loosen my lips. I try to get in, but I can't find the door. The door is open. You're standing there. You let me in. Gloria. I remember feeling like my soul was doing backflips. The words of that song were familiar, a psalm, a chant from the liturgy, an image of Christ standing at the door of our hearts and knocking. I recognized them from church, but somehow they'd never had that kind of an effect on me before. As the next tracks on the vinyl album played, one after the other, filled with biblical imagery and declarations of spiritual yearning, I was completely transfixed by the extraordinary mix of faith with rock and roll, a forbidden fruit in my house growing up, by the way. I had been taught that I was supposed to be in the world, but not of it. So who was this band? How did these guys manage to pull such a seemingly paradoxical mixture off? Who else was doing it? And was there a chance that I could do it too? Hearing U2's album October for the first time all those years ago set me on a course that continues to this day. It's a search for the truly sacred in the supposedly profane, a quest to discover God's face hidden in culture, in those so-called forbidden realms, where, according to a lot of religious folks, the holy isn't supposed to dwell. That day, I began my search for the same kind of unrivaled inspiration and spiritual elation I experienced so powerfully in Rob's living room. As long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by religion. My parents tell stories about me at age 5 or 6, sitting on the floor of our family's living room, poring over a coffee table book of world religions with its pictures of whirling dervishes and Muslim women in hijab and Hindu girls with henna'd hands, gilded icons from Russian Orthodoxy, and giant Japanese Buddhas. Religion was a big part of my life growing up. first in Roman Catholicism, and then in the strange new land of evangelical Protestantism. I was, and I still am, a believer. But after my musical baptism in the river of rock and roll, I became consumed with the idea that spirituality could be expressed just as eloquently, or maybe even more so, outside of a house of worship than in it. I became convinced that faith could be lived in radically different ways, because God is a really big God. Now on the cusp of 40, I'm still looking, as fascinated as ever. My search led me into journalism, and I've been blessed to be able to cover religious and spiritual issues almost exclusively for my entire career. On what I call the God beat, it's been an embarrassment of riches. On the job, I've been blessed with extraordinary experiences and encounters with people of all faiths and none that have enlivened my own faith. I've had the chance to sit down with many of my personal heroes of the faith: Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Annie Lamott, Tony Campolo, Jean Vanier, Elie Wiesel, Frederick Buechner, Barack Obama, and Bono, that unlikely Irish prophet whose voice singing out to God was the catalyst that sent me on this grand adventure all those years ago in Rob's living room. As a journalist, I've had a front row seat to history. I've traveled the globe searching for the holy. My work has taken me from the West Wing to the dugout at Wrigley Field, from the Vatican to the Playboy Mansion, and from a Nobel laureate's study to the slums of Nairobi, Kenya. I've discovered the sacred in churches, temples, mosques, ashrams, and gurdwaras. I've also encountered God on the dance floor of a rave party, in the back of a rock star's bus, in a cancer patient's kitchen, and in the eyes of an AIDS orphan in Malawi. I've had thousands of conversations with people, famous, infamous, and spectacularly ordinary, about their experience with the divine. What I've discovered more than anything else is that everyone has a sacred story, one that God alone is writing. In his book, Now and Then, Frederick Buechner urges us to pay attention to our lives because God's fingerprints are all over the place. Listen to your life, Buechner says. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is, in the boredom and the pain of it, no less than the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. Because Buechner says that we must pay attention to the things that bring a tear to our eye or a lump to our throat, and I would add, make your soul do backflips, because they're signs that the holy is drawing nigh. May you have the ears to hear the voice of the holy and the eyes to see the divine at work in the world, all around you, all the time, in every person and in everything, in each sacred encounter and joy, in each new experience and in sorrow. May you be surprised by the holy, and may you too encounter the God of love in the most unexpected of places.